A reading from the Gospel of John. Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him, about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to see you all. And Eric, if you can take off the screen share for a minute and then put it back on, that'd be great. Thank you all for joining us this morning as we come to you live from wherever we are and wherever you are. I just wanted to say a few words about the readings this morning because I think that they present a unique opportunity and challenge for us. And I think you can't start anywhere else than Paul's opening line in Corinthians, "All things are lawful for me." And if you notice on the screen, that was in quotes because this is Paul repeating back kind of a popular slogan in Corinth at the time. All things are lawful for me. And if you spent any time listening to the media or news or anyone else in the last year, that's certainly been a lot of Americans' attitude. That all things are lawful for me. So, but what is Paul responding to here? Paul, and this is sort of a problem that Paul made. Have you ever, told someone something and then really regretted it almost instantly? There's an old Simpsons episode where Homer runs into the church yelling, "Sanctuary, sanctuary." And Reverend Lovejoy says, "Why did I teach him that word?" And this is, Paul is having kind of a similar moment here because Paul is the one who told all these Christian Corinthians that these Greek Christians in Corinth, that they didn't have to follow the Jewish laws. And so they assumed that all things were lawful for them because the culture of Corinth was one of, if I have money and power and connections, I can do whatever I want. Commentators suggest that Corinth is something like has the culture of Paris, the money of New York, and the party scene of Las Vegas, which basically makes it Miami. And that, so the people there are from all over the world. There's the rich with wealth from the port trading and with exotic items from the East. And they kind of do whatever they want. And so when Paul in earlier conversations frees them up from any notion of having to follow Jewish religious law, they lean heavily into it and kind of celebrate their freedom. All things are lawful for me. It's almost like the Corinthians are taking a note from Cartman in South Park in the scene where he says, "I do what I want." That there is this sense of, I can do whatever I want and you can't stop me. And that's very much where I think a lot of America is right now. I won't wear a mask. I won't socially distance. I won't respect the results of this election. I won't stop trying to overthrow the government. I won't stop spreading conspiracy theories. I won't. All things are lawful for me. And it gets worse, I think. The all things are lawful extends to a whole host of other things as well. Whether it's stand your ground laws. Well, it was legal for me to shoot that boy. It was legal for the police to shoot Tamir Rice. It was legal for the police to shoot Breonna Taylor. These things are lawful. There's nothing wrong with it. We convince ourselves that the law or the legality of something somehow protects us from consequences. It's lawful, they say. But the thing about things being lawful for me is that if all things are lawful for me, it means something is not lawful for you, right? We can't have all things be lawful for everyone. So my need to protect my own freedom ends up impinging on yours if I'm not aware of the world that I live in, if I'm not aware of the people around me. And so this reality of this falsity of freedom is just often becomes a way for me to continue to persecute others. This weekend, we celebrate the life of Martin Luther King Jr. And it's, I think when I was in school and was taught about this period, that period of history, it was that, all these people were terrible racists. And then Martin Luther King came along and they all stopped being racist, right? That's what happened. The reality is that most people then, as now, didn't identify themselves as racist. There was a small minority of people were part of the Ku Klux Klan or these hate groups, but most people just, they wanted to protect their values. They wanted to protect their property value. They wanted to protect the condition of their kids' school. They wanted to protect their children's relationships. They wanted to protect the sanctity of their church. It was all couched in protecting my things, my freedoms, what's legal for me. It was the law, after all. Jim Crow was the law. All I'm doing is upholding the law. It's lawful for me. So this, and nothing then has changed, right? That we have gone, that the reality today is that most people don't see themselves as racist, despite the fact that they continue to engage in and support racist activities. It's amazing to me that someone could say, I'd like to invalidate all the votes of only Black people in Philadelphia and Detroit and keep all the white votes, and not understand that that is a racist act, right? Or that we can see a protest at the Capitol where, a week later, after trying to, overthrow the government, people are being let out on bail. When similar protesters are still in jail from protests this summer against police violence. And so, but it just takes willful ignorance to not see the connection, to not see that there's that racism plays a huge factor in all of this. And we do that by hiding behind the law. It's lawful. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, I'm going to get back to the rest of Corinthians. So don't think you're off the hook with all that other stuff. But first, I want to remind us that this is a time, I think, in our lives, and perhaps in this homily, where you all feel pretty self-righteous sometimes, right? Like all those other people are bad and terrible, and we are good. If only everyone was like us, the world would be fine. But there are a lot of things, friends, that we do that are lawful, that are are just as bad. So if you're, in our neighborhood right now, there is an effort to change housing rules to keep the number of renters down in the neighborhood. and it's a proxy for poor people and Black people. And the concern is not racism. No, it's property values. I'm worried about my property values. I don't want low-income people coming into these buildings, into these properties, into this community. It's not about racism. It's just about property values. Or the ways that we engage with the real problems that our city faces. Whether, I mean, I've done it myself and said that, yes, there's lots of gun violence in Baltimore, but it only affects a certain community. I've distanced myself from whatever's going on over there, the kind of losses that are happening over there, to really just so I can sleep at night. Or how we handle issues of poverty and inequality. You know, we will roll up our windows when we get to a stoplight. We'll call the cops on squeegee kids who are at the corner working, but we'll give, you know, food and clothes to the food pantry. And we say it's because it's lawful. What they're doing is illegal. I feel bad for them, but it's not the law. They're breaking the law without ever questioning why it's the law in the first place and what it means that we have made it illegal to be poor in a city where it is hard to be anything but. Now, there is an answer for this, right? And Jesus provides it in the Gospels. You see, I used to think that this gospel was making fun of Nathaniel, right? Nathaniel is sitting there under the fig tree. He's making a wisecrack joke about this guy from Nazareth. Suddenly Jesus says, "Hey, Nathaniel, come and follow me." And when Nathaniel says, "How'd you know my name?" He says, "I saw you under the tree earlier." And then Nathaniel believes, right? And so we laugh at Nathaniel for that's all it takes, just to have him like say, know who you is. I mean, this is the Son of God. But how often do we bother to know someone's name? How many people out there in Baltimore, in your city, wherever you are, never have anyone learn their name? Never have anyone look them in the eye and tell them that they love them, aside from maybe a mother or a father. That there is a need for us, that there is a need to be loved and to be known. And yet, we still roll up our windows when we get to the stop sign. We flash the windshield wipers at the squeegee kids. We yell at the people walking down the street who we're worried maybe trying to steal packages or do something else. We never bother to learn their names. And I think we talk about Jesus sometimes and we think, oh, well, of course people followed him. He was the Son of God. He went on healing all these people. But his closest followers, he never healed, right? He doesn't heal Nathaniel. He doesn't heal Andrew. He doesn't heal Peter or Paul. Like, what he does for them is know them. He connects with them. He meets them. He asks them who they are, and he learns their names. Why don't we bother to learn people's names? Now, there's a book I will recommend you all read by the former dean of Duke Divinity School, and my wife is going to throw things at me for recommending anything from Duke. But it's really, a fantastic book called Living Without Enemies by Samuel Wells and his partner in the work, Marcia Owen. And it's about their journey in trying to take action against gun violence in the city of Durham. And they describe sort of a fourfold process, and I'll talk through it very quickly, and then we talk a little bit more about Corinthians, because it plays in. That when they started wanting to do work and gun violence, they did what all of us do, which is they got a group together, they formed a committee, and they did something, right? So they passed the law making it illegal to have a gun. All right, problem solved, right? It's 5 years in jail if you get caught with a gun, and we have decided this is what it should be, so go for it. But that didn't reduce gun violence, because the people involved in gun violence are already so desperate, already so worried and so lost and so unsure of what's next in their life that the 5 years didn't mean anything. All it did was create more crime and more people in jail that were unreachable, that were separated from us. It created another subsection of less human people that we had to deal with. You were in jail for gun crimes. You deserve to be there, and we'll put you there and make the problem go away. And so when that didn't work, and that's called doing for. You have a problem. I know how to fix it. Here's what you need. And a lot of our ministry in the church is doing for ministries, right? Here's some breakfast. You're hungry. Here's some clothes. Here's some money. There's no partnership. And they decided, okay, well, we shouldn't do this. This is obviously not the right strategy. Let's get the smartest people together to figure out how to solve the problem, right? Let's get all the people who've studied gun violence, who've researched gun violence, who know what's going on in the streets, and come up with a solution. And so this is not doing. This is being, right? That we're going to understand these issues so that we can better act on them. But the funny thing about gun violence and a lot of issues that affect poor inner city communities is that most of the experts have never experienced it themselves, right? The researchers at Harvard and Yale and other places have no sense of what gun violence actually means. They see the data. They can run all kinds of regressions and tell you who's most likely to do it. But they have no sense for what's going on. So they came up with these solutions that again fell flat because they were now, instead of doing, they were being, but they were being for somebody else. And then finally, they said, okay, well, let's go into the community, right? Let's figure out what they need. And so they started doing some deeper conversations, some deeper work, and they began to meet people impacted by gun violence. They started doing prayer meetings and other things within urban areas in Durham. And so they got a group of neighbors together and they went to the newspaper, and a bunch of rich white neighbors and poor black neighbors. And they sat down with the editor of the newspaper and said, how come you don't cover these stories, right? These people die, people are dying every day on the street, and they barely get a blurb in the headlines, right? And the white neighbor said, well, if my daughter was shot, would it be like on section E in Metro? And they said, no, of course not. And so the newspaper suddenly had this realization. And this is good, right? But it still doesn't solve the problem, because now, I got together with the people who I thought needed help, and I said, you and me are going to work together to solve your problem. You and me are going to work together to solve your problem, not your problem, right? You're the one with the problem. I didn't do anything. And then finally, the book describes this kind of beautiful scene where they're doing a vigil outside after where a person had been shot on the corner. And as they're sitting there, two young men come up and they said, what are you doing? Marcia explains what's going on. They say, that's great. You should keep doing this. And then the next week, one of those men was shot and killed. They had just gotten out of prison, and they were coming out of the jail in Durham, and he was shot a week later and died. And it was at that point they realized that it's not about doing, it is about being. As soon as those deaths became personal for the people involved, it changed how they felt about it. It was about relationship. It was about seeing the other as human, seeing each other as humans. In a sense, it was about justice, not charity, right? A lot of our work is charity, but justice is when we identify a problem as a problem we share and work to solve it forever. as one of our members had put it a few years ago, justice is not beating the odds, justice is changing the odds. And often we get so excited about celebrating people who beat the odds, who make it out, that we never think about the need to change the odds, so that leaving Baltimore isn't the idea of success, because that still very much is the idea of success for too many people. So what does this have to do with all that infidelity and immorality talked about in Corinthians? Well, this section of Paul's letter to Corinth, obviously deals with infidelity, but if we don't understand that the politics and the Greek at the root here, we can get on the wrong track. You see, there's two different ways that the Greeks described adultery or marital infidelity. One is the word that's used here, which in Greek is porneia, and the other is a different word that has a very different connotation. So the second word that is not used here is all about honor, and it is violating a woman's honor or a person's honor or a family's honor by taking advantage of someone or breaking apart a relationship. Very much, I think, how we understand adultery in the world today, but with a much heavier sort of patriarchal bent, right? But it's about honor. And so the Christians in Corinth, the people that Paul is writing to, would say, well, they would never dishonor somebody else. Like, they would never dishonor another person's wife or another person's daughter, another person's family. That would be terrible. But this other word, porneia, really refers to actions taken against enslaved people, right? People who don't have honor. So honor doesn't play here because these aren't real people. I mean, they're flesh and blood and humans, but they're not like people. And so these people are coming to Paul and saying, but it's legal. It's legal for me to abuse these people. It's legal for me to hurt these people. It's legal for me to enslave them. I own them. They're my property. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. And Paul says, no. You are breaking the bonds of affection. You are rupturing the body of Christ and attaching it to something terrible. So you are breaking the bonds of Christ and you're attaching it to something else, something evil. Paul is using prostitute here as a metaphor for how we're breaking apart this body and selling it to something else. And we are doing it using humans that we consider less than human. So what does that mean for us? That we have to start any work with relationship, with humanizing each other. And whether you look across the aisle, the pew, the street, or the country, you've got to be able to see that person on the other side as human, as flesh and blood, and as children of God. And then we can begin that relationship, that being for process, that ability to engage with what is going on in their lives, share what's going on in your life, and realize that all of our problems are interconnected. All of our stories, our joys and hopes and dreams and fears and wants and hurts are interconnected. I think it's the height of hypocrisy for us to think that the person who is coming to the food pantry or the person that we are helping out to find a job or with money on the corner can't offer anything to me, right? Because they are just as much a beloved child of God as I am, and have just as much to offer the world as I do. Now, I say all this for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that for many of us here, The next 3 days are going to bring momentous change. And there are a few of us, no one in this here, of course, but other people who will decide that on January 21st, all this goes away, right? Just like Martin Luther King made the racism go away, a new administration will make all the problems go away. But they're still going to be there. They're still going to need our prayers, our hopes, our dreams, and our actions. So we need to be like Jesus in this moment and be like Paul in this moment. To learn people's names, to remind each other and others of our shared humanity, to reach across boundaries of difference, to build communities of justice, communities of faith, and communities of hope. Amen.